Hello and welcome to the Championship Talk podcast. I'm your host Paul O'Toole, and not joined with me is my co-host Thomas Falco. Unfortunately, with a busy Christmas period, this is the first opportunity I've got to record, let alone try and sync our schedules. But we are looking to record, and I know that he's been watching Championship football and started to watch the African Cup of Nations as well, which he seems to be enjoying quite a lot. For those of you that want to listen to 2 years ago and the last year's Africa Cup of Nations rundown, we had a great time doing that over the summer. Obviously, a little bit more busier trying to do that with a championship schedule. So we've got a whole host of news since I recorded before the Christmas break. We're going to start with, it's been reported that Mike Ashley is preparing a takeover bid of Derby County. It's been announced that he's in talks with Derby's administrators. This was reported on Sky News, and that it's the largest bid so far received by the administrators. So we're hoping to see some light at the end of the table for end of the tunnel for Derby. It's a long way to go. It is an awful long way to go, and I wouldn't say that I wouldn't bank on that being a foregone conclusion. Is what I would say. I'll temper your until you have a new owner. And although it sounds silly that Newcastle fans were so glad to get rid of Mike Ashley, Derby fans will be happy that anyone buys that club, that is able to put that club on a financial footing that means that they are not looking like they're going to go under. That would be a good thing. So we move on to Millwall's FA Cup game with Crystal Palace. And there's been reported homophobic chanting. It was there was missiles thrown at the players. There was a bottle thrown at Michael Elise. There was a flare that was thrown onto the pitch. If you watched the game live, there was a really loud explosion from fireworks that were in the ground. The Palace players were booed for taking the knee before kickoff. All of this is being investigated, and considering that Millwall seem to have issues with a stereotype, they don't like being pigeonholed for these types of things. It is amazing that if you listen to the timeline of this podcast, if you've been listening since day one, there is a common theme with this type of behaviour coming up, and it is really frustrating that it keeps happening. And it's it was a game that was live on telly. It was a really good game of football, and it's just so sad that Millwall have the Millwall fans, and they'll say it's a minority. It's a minority that turn up to the stadium, and it's that the fans choose to behave this way. They believe it's acceptable, and that's it. Just shows how out of touch some of those fans' views are with the world, and it was sad. It really was sad, because it was a game that was live on telly, and it gave a poor representation of the Championship. It gave a poor representation of some of the great work the fans do in the Championship for their local communities. And Millwall are the first to jump up and down and say how great they are and how much they do in their community, and they do a lot in their community. But it's almost like they're having to work hard to cover up for a minority of morons. And the other thing that I would temper that is Millwall have issued lifetime bans to people in the past. How did they get fireworks in the stadium? How did flares get in the stadium? I mean, come on, this is 2022. Like how are we allowing fireworks in an enclosed environment? That just it baffles me. So it's going to be interesting to see what the investigations unearth. I'm angry because that's not a representation of supporters in the Championship, and I think that most fans of other clubs will just go, yeah, it's Millwall again. And Millwall want to shake that reputation. Well, the only way you're going to do it is for the fans to behave properly. And clearly, there were a proportion. It was heard, and they were able to. The commentators had to say sorry if you heard, what you heard, and it was just terrible. It was terrible. Middlesbrough defender Mark Bowler has had to complete an education course over historical homophobic tweets. He published the tweets in April 2012. He was 14 years old at the time. He's accepted a charge last year and has been ordered to complete an education order. He's also apologised and deleted the tweets. This is something that it sounds awful, but we need to punish players and high-profile players more severely for these tweets to discourage 14-year-olds that are now being trolls on social media from making these types of comments. For making these types of for thinking that this type of behaviour is acceptable. And we can say, oh yeah, but he was 14. You know, it was 10 years ago. But there are 14-year-olds now that think it's acceptable to make homophobic, racist, remarks on social media. So when a footballer does have a comment from his past, however, innocuous it may have seemed at the time, that is wrong, we do need to highlight this to show younger people that that type of behaviour is not acceptable, and that type of behaviour doesn't go away. It can affect you 10 years down the line if you're the CEO of a company or a professional footballer or a singer. Those comments don't disappear, and they do leave a stain on your character. And I think that's the only way we get younger people to realise that behaving like this isn't the way that you should behave. And it is hidden behind that anonymous veil that social media creates. It's almost like I will never get found out. I'll never, it doesn't matter. I'm doing it on social media. Absolutely, it matters, and it absolutely shouldn't be. You shouldn't be doing it. So we move on to COVID. I left this to last just because I'm sick of talking about COVID. So as we know, that there are different parts of the country that have different restrictions, and the Welsh government have imposed restrictions on sporting events, which is going to affect Swansea and Cardiff's home games. So those of you that watched the FA Cup tie, it was very obvious when you watch Match of the Day and it gets to the Swansea game. I'm definitely certain it was a Swansea game. I'm now frantically trying to... Yes, Swansea-Southampton. It was noticeably obvious that there was no fans in the stadium at all. And this came into effect from Boxing Day, so it means that any games played at the Cardiff City Stadium or the Liberty Stadium won't have any fans in. So when you're watching the highlights and you're watching that, bear that in mind, because I also think that'll affect the players. I think it'll be very jarring for Swansea and Cardiff players to go and play away and have stadiums that are nearly full, and when they have a home game, they have no stay. I would imagine that's going to affect them in a points type of way, and it is interesting. Obviously, the Welsh government have taken the decision to do what they've done. Obviously, the Scottish government have taken the decision to do what they've done. The British government obviously haven't gone down that road yet. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks in regards to fan attendance at stadiums, if cases tend to rise, etc. The one thing I would say though, it just reminds you how precious having fans in stadium is. When you watch a game that doesn't have it, it's not a good watch. So speaking of the FA Cup, obviously the Championship sides, we only care about the Championship sides. So the Championship sides that played, Coventry beat Derby 1-0. Obviously that was an all Championship side. Huddersfield Town had an amazing win over Burnley, and were the better sides. And Huddersfield did amazing, so they're in the fourth round. Hartlepool beat Blackpool 2-1. That was that was a big upset. Fulham beat Bristol City after extra time. Millwall against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace beat Millwall 2-1. That was a really good game, I say, marred by idiots in the crowd. West Brom lost to Brighton 2-1. Kidderminster Harriers beat Reading, and probably one of the upsets other than the Newcastle Cambridge one. That was a phenomenal upset, and Reading are just getting it kicking from all sides at the moment. Wigan beat Blackburn Rovers, and that was a big upset. Blackburn Rovers, second in the table. I wouldn't have put Wigan a good side. They have been a good side, and I would have had Blackburn to win that all day long. Barnsley beat Barrow. Peterborough beat Bristol Rovers. QPR beat Rotherham on penalties. Swansea lost to Southampton. Birmingham lost to Plymouth Argyle. Again, another upset, but Plymouth Argyle, not a bad side. Yeovil lost to Bournemouth. Luton beat Harrogate Town 4-0. Stoke beat Leyton Orient. Cardiff beat Preston 2-1. Wolves beat Sheffield United 3-0. And Nottingham Forest were lucky against Arsenal. So where that leaves the fourth round draw, and obviously we like to cover the Championship clubs in the FA Cup. We've got Bournemouth are going to host Boreham Wood, so you'd expect that to be Bournemouth have got a good opportunity to get into the fifth round. Peterborough are at home to QPR, so that's an all championship side, all championship tie. Cambridge United host Luton. That's actually a derby for those of you that know the geography. That's going to be a very good game to watch. We've got Liverpool are at home to Cardiff City. Stoke are at home to Wigan. Nottingham Forest will play Leicester. See if they can be lucky again. Manchester City have got Fulham, and that's the Championship clubs that are in the FA Cup. So we're going to move to the games. Now we know that the games are in a very strange order due to the fact that a lot of clubs had to cancel fixtures, and it tends to follow those clubs. So when it gets to the league table, that's going to be really interesting for me to do, because there's a lot of teams that have played a lot of different amount of games. But bear with me. And I'm going to not go into too much detail about the goals, because some of these games are years old. So on Boxing Day, Huddersfield beats Blackpool 3-2. Jerry Yates scores after a minute. That put Blackpool ahead. Danny Ward then scores a header to make that 1-1. That was after 3 minutes. Gary Medine then scores after 18 minutes. He scores a header to make it 2-1 to Blackpool. Then Sorba Thomas scores after 80 minutes to make it 2-2. He then gets one 4 minutes later to make that 3-2. Jordan Lawrence Gabriel got sent off for second bookable offence on 61 minutes. There was 18,900 at John Smith Stadium to see that game. Huddersfield had 60% possession, 14 shots, 6 on target. Blackpool had 10 shots, 3 on target. So also on Boxing Day, Middlesbrough played Nottingham Forest. Middlesbrough won 2-0. Ryan Yates scores an own goal for Forest on 17 minutes. Then Sporar scores on 69 minutes to make that 2-0 to Middlesbrough. There was 29,000 at Riverside. I've not seen the Riverside that full since Middlesbrough were in the Premier League. And even then they didn't fill the stadium that much, all that often. 50-50 possession. Middlesbrough had 12 shots, 6 on target. 7 shots to Forest, none on target. It's, Steve Cooper said a striker is what he's after. Definitely. This was Monday the 27th. Derby 1, West Brom 0. Colin Kazim-Richards scores after 58 minutes. Just a real surprise. 24,846 turned up at Pride Park to see this game. Ryan Alsop in net for Derby. Man match. I'll tell you why in a second. Derby had 38% possession. West Brom had 62% possession. West Brom had 19 shots. That's why he got man of the match. Derby had 1 shot on target the entire game and scored. Against the run of play is definitely there, but West Brom can be wasteful in front of goal. So also on Monday the 27th was QPR 0, Bournemouth 1. Dominic Solanke scores a header on 41 minutes. Andre Giselle came on as a substitute at half time, got booked at 58 minutes, then got sent off in the 90th minute. Not a great game for him. 16,000 at Loftus Road to see this game. Possession 55% for QPR, 8 shots, 2 on target. Bournemouth had 15 shots, 6 on target. Wednesday the 29th, Blackburn hosted Barnsley. Blackburn won 2-1. Joe Rothwell scored after 24 minutes. Carlton Morris got one back on 45 into injury time in the first half. Then Ben Brereton Diaz scored after 65 minutes to give Blackburn all 3 points. 14,000 at Ewood Park to see this. Blackburn had 72% possession, 16 shots, 5 on target. Absolutely dominant. Blackpool, Then, so that was Barnsley, sorry, they were played. Blackpool played Middlesbrough on the same day. They lost 2-1. Spiral scores after 60 minutes. Shane Lowry scores into injury time. Then Duncan Watman scores into more injury time to make it 2-1. Crazy game. 30,428 turned up at Bloomfield Road on a Wednesday night to see this game, and that was phenomenal. just to see crowds like this in the Championship is just phenomenal. And then to a week later see games with no fans is, we don't want to go back to that. 50% possession, 12 shots to Blackpool, 11 to Middlesbrough, 2 shots on target to Blackpool, 3 for Middlesbrough. Also on Wednesday night, Coventry 0, Millwall 1. Tom Bradshaw scores on 79 minutes. There was 18,000 at the Ricoh Arena, whatever they call it nowadays. 55% possession to Coventry, 14 shots, 3 on target. Millwall had 9 shots, 2 on target. Thursday the 30th of December, this was also a quarter-to-8 kickoff. Bournemouth 3, Cardiff 0. Ryan Christie scores after 25 minutes. Dominic Solanke then gets a second on 68 minutes. And then Alex Smithy scores a really comical own goal. Into injury time in the first half, Bakuna gets sent off for Cardiff, which makes a big impact into this game. There was 8,942 at the Vitality Stadium. I wish I had a percentage because that's mostly full. That stadium doesn't hold a lot. But Bournemouth had 72% possession, 16 shots, 5 on target, to Cardiff's 6 shots, 3 on target. Bristol City 1, QPR 2. Alex Scott scores after 3 minutes. Charlie Austin then scores a penalty into injury time in the first half. Then Barbate then scores a header into injury time in the second half. Andy King gets sent off for a second bookable offence. He gets booked for the penalty, and then he gets sent off on 56 minutes. There was 19,545 at Ashton Gate to see this game. 45% possession to Bristol City, 11 shots, 3 on target. Then we move on to Forest 0, Huddersfield 1. Holmes scores after 30 minutes with a left-footed shot. 27,000 at the City Ground to see this. Lee Nichols in goal for Huddersfield as man of the match. 23 shots Forest had, 6 on target. They had near enough 60% possession as well. So very the run of play was definitely towards Forest. Stoke 0, Derby 2. Plange then scores after 16 minutes. Tom Ince then gets one back on 78 minutes. Then Collie Kazim Richards then scores on 85 minutes, set up by Ravel Morrison. 22,235 at the Bet365 Stadium. Stoke had more possession. They had 56% possession, 7 shots, 1 on target. Derby had 10 shots, 4 on target. So we move on to New Year's Day. Blackpool 1, Hull 0. Gary Medine scores a penalty on 31 minutes. There was 11,300 at Bloomfield Road to see this game. Grimshaw in goal for Blackpool was man of the match. 47% possession, 8 shots, 3 on target. Plays 14 shots, 6 on target. Sunday the 2nd, we've got Bristol City 3, Millwall 2. Vyman scores after 7 minutes to make it 1-0 Bristol City. Tom Bradshaw scores after 23 minutes and equalises. Benik Afobe scores a penalty on 29 minutes. Vyman then scores again on 73 minutes to make it 2-2. And then Vyman then gets another one on 85 minutes and gets his hat-trick to make that 3-2 to Bristol City. Obviously, Vyman man of the match. 58% possession to Bristol City. 12 shots, 8 on target. 11 to Millwall, 3 on target. Birmingham 1, QPR 2. Albert Adoma scores after 14 minutes. Chris Willock then makes it 2-0 on 71 minutes. And then Birmingham get one back on 75 minutes. We've got 23,000 at St Andrews saw this game. Birmingham had near a 60% possession, 8 shots, only 1 on target, which is quite criminal, really. West Brom 1, Cardiff 1. James Collins scores a header after 34 minutes. Callum Robinson then gets one back on 48 minutes. Then we had... This game had red cards galore. Alex Mowatt gets sent off on 76 minutes. Sam Johnston gets sent off, the goalkeeper for West Brom, on 90 minutes. And Aidan Flynn also gets sent off on 90 minutes in the same incident. 22,000 at the Hawthorns to see this. West Brom had 13 shots, 3 on target. And Cardiff had 1 shot on target the entire game. Blackburn 0, Huddersfield 0. This game happened. 16,000 at Ewood Park to see this. In the whole game, we had 3 shots on target the whole game. Reading 2, Derby 2. Junior Hoylett scores on 37 minutes. He then gets a second on 56 minutes. Then Colin Kazim-Richards gets a header on 86 minutes. And then Curtis Davis into injury time equalises for Derby. Derby just will not go away. They will not go away this season. I think they are going to run and run and run. And the current points, we'll get to the table in a minute, obviously skewed towards the games, but yeah, it's Wayne Rooney is, it's going to sound stupid to say this, but he'd be a candidate for manager of the season so far, which is crazy to say that, and I never thought I'd be saying that at the start of the season. Stoke 1, Preston 2. Ben Wilmot scores after 46 minutes to make it 1-0 to Stoke. Brad Potts then scores on 59 minutes, and then Andrew Hughes gets a header on 81 minutes to make it 2-1 to Preston. 20,000 at Bet365 to see Preston had 55% possession, 6 shots, 3 on target. Stoke had 14 shots, 2 on target. So we are now, the game's all caught up. Not in the detail that I'd normally do, but it's because there were so many games, so higgledy-piggledy, some teams didn't even feature. Where that leaves the table, and I'm going to read the name of the team, the amount of games they've played, and then the points, because I think the two are factored in. Bournemouth sit top, 25 games played, 49 points. Blackburn, a second, 25 games played, 46 points. Fulham, a third, 23 games played, 45 points. West Brom, a fourth, 25 games played, 42 points. QPR, a fifth, 24 games played, 41 points. Huddersfield, a sixth, 26 games played, 40 points. Middlesbrough, a seventh, 25 games played, 39 points. Stoke, at eighth, 24 games played, 35 points. So we're going to move down to the bottom of the table. Derby are 24th, 11 points, 25 games played. Obviously, they have had a 21-point deduction. So they effectively would be on 32 points. Barnsley are 23rd, second from bottom. They played 24 games, 14 points. Peterborough 22nd, third from bottom. 23 games played, 19 points. Reading are 21st, 23 games played, 22 points. They have had a 6-point deduction. Cardiff are 20th, 24 games played, 23 points. Hull are 19th, 24 games played, 23 points. Birmingham and Swansea are both on 27 points, so quite a big gap there. Effectively, had Derby not had their points deduction and Reading not had their points deduction, Cardiff would occupy one of the bottom 3 places. That's how that equates to. So the fixtures, the games that potentially could get played. Tuesday the 11th of January, so as I'm recording this podcast, that is tomorrow. Reading are due to host Fulham. Wednesday the 12th of January, Barnsley are due to host Stoke. Saturday, we're supposed to have a 12:30 kickoff. Luton are supposed to host Bournemouth. Middlesbrough are supposed to host Reading. Millwall are supposed to host Nottingham Forest. Peterborough are supposed to be at home to Coventry. Preston are supposed to be home to Birmingham. QPR are supposed to be home to West Brom. Cardiff host Blackburn. Huddersfield host Swansea. Barnsley host Blackpool. Derby host Sheffield United. Fulham host Bristol City, and then on the Sunday, which is a 12 o'clock kickoff, Hull is supposed to host Stoke. Very upside down all over the place. So goal scorers, Alexander Mitrovic on 22. Ben Brereton's moved up to 20 goals. Dominic Solanke is on 18. Vyman has moved up to 12. And Joe Pirro on 11. Obviously, we know the transfer window is open. And that is where we're going to call in a friend of the pod, Thomas Falco, to go through the transfers in great detail. Obviously, some of the players that have already transferred will be featuring in the games ahead, but we will do all the transfers in a big rundown, because what tends to happen is as so much goes on, you tend to only focus on your club, or you tend to only look at your own club, and what that can mean is the transfers that go under the radar that you don't necessarily know about, so we want to give them on that concise, way that Thomas likes to round up every transfer, WSL, academy players, coaches that change hands, he does them all. So we will be doing that again. So thank you all for listening. As always, hit a like button, hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review on any podcast service that you use, and myself and Thomas will speak to you all next week, hopefully after a full round of fixtures, and it's looking like it could potentially be that way. But as always, check your club's website, check your club's Twitter feed if you're due to go to a game, because we have had games postponed already at 2-hour notice, which is very shame. Would be a very big shame if you made a big journey to an away game only for the game to be cancelled. So that's goodbye from me, and that would be a goodbye from him, and we'll speak to you all later. Goodbye.